Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. This is the Positivity Podcast with a little bit of a difference. It's the Wednesday morning we're recording this after Boris Johnson's latest announcements. We've got Paul Spicer. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Paul. How are we?
Hello to everyone whenever you're listening to this.
Paul's in the hotel room in Southampton. That's fortunate, really, because at least it's working. We have Alasdair Hobbs from Human Results, our HR legal expert. Good morning, Alasdair. How are we?
Morning, Ben. Very well, thanks.
And today we're joined from Zoe Wadsworth from Fab Events. And Fab Events means we are definitely all going to be positive. Good morning, Zoe. How are you?
Good, thank you. Positivity is key, guys, in these uncertain times.
I'm so glad you've joined us today, Zoe. I like that part already. Paul, we come to yourself first. You did a very passionate Facebook Live last night. We can do this, can't we? We can do things in the events industry.
It's that thing that, we knew about 11 o'clock. It didn't matter about the announcement at 8 o'clock in the evening. We all knew what he was going to say, and it is a kick in the teeth. I'm going to outline this again for anyone who hasn't watched the Facebook Live, and I'd be surprised if you hadn't seen it. It's basically that for the next 6 months, we're still where we are. Nothing's changing, and it's very doubtful that they're going to put any funding or anything else towards us because he dodged a load of questions when asked about that and how he was going to help our industry. We're basically in this for the long run. It's going to be tough, but we can do it if we all pull together.
We can. And Alasdair, the events industry and hospitality and entertainment obviously is all linked up because a lot of the entertainments take place in the hospitality areas. Where are we? Because people can't pay the wages from October. What can the companies do to keep the staff that they've trained up, they've took the time to put and the effort to put the money in? What can they do to keep them staff?
Yeah, Ben, desperately difficult. Temporary layoffs are only good for a matter of days, not months. It's one thing you can put people on 0 hours contracts if they're not on them already, but there's a lot of people are. The fact is, if you cannot put on an event that you can put on to make money, then you're going to have very deep pockets and just be in a position to be able to put yourself in hibernation. Yesterday we've seen in Wales, Treco Bay, which is owned by Park Dean, I think, is it? Treco Bay is Europe's largest holiday caravan park. About 4,000 holiday makers were asked to leave yesterday, promised their money back, those that were paying. Those that are caravan owners have also been asked to leave. So I'm assuming that the decision has been taken that's going to be Treco Bay done for 6 months. All of those staff working there for Part D. Now, obviously, it's a large company, but it is very much in that space. How can they afford to keep paying staff beyond the end of furlough, if indeed they are continuing to pay staff as long as that? I think, obviously, the government wants people to borrow where they can, but then again, the civil scheme, I believe, is due to end at the end of this month. So there's not many practical things that you can do, Ben. You can make redundancies. You can put people on 0 hours contracts. You can use modest guaranteed payments. Furlough pay runs out as it still stands at the end of October. Businesses that are strong enough to survive will do so, and those that aren't won't. And I guess that's where we get political, and that's kind of how liberal free market economics works. Maybe we just all become puritanical and don't go out next year.
No. Let's not say that.
Ben,
I know what you mean.
There's not many positive things that businesses can do. There are things businesses can do to protect themselves. There's not a lot of good news for their staff or the owners when it comes to earning a living, though.
And Paul, how would you feel about a conversation tomorrow, putting staff on 0 hours contract that have been with you 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Put yourself in that shoes. It's not the conversation you want to be having, is it?
No, but it's the reality, and I'm probably going to have to do that. I said on the Facebook Live, if I don't do something, I ain't going to be here March next year. And I'm being quite boldly and open and honest after 17 years in business. So I've got to find ways to stop that from happening. It's an option to put the staff on that, and it's going to be heartbreaking. I've already kind of pre-warned them months ago that anything could happen. They might go part-time, they might put on 0 hours, they might literally only end up working 1 day a week for me, and they might have to seek other employment. But we had to be realistic at looking at it, but this is actually making things worse for the industry, unfortunately. I know you want all the positivity and that, but frankly, that's there's not a lot of positivity in this situation. The only positivity from this is how you're going to be able to adapt, how you're going to be able to change to stop you from making these layoffs, and how you can find other ways to generate income to bring into your business to get you through the next 6 months. Because I didn't say I was going to get political, but I wouldn't rely on the government.
Paul, listen, you are a positive person. We all know
Yeah.
that, and we know that you've got your serious part on. We've all got to be serious, let's be honest. I think it's time to bring in our special guest today, Zoe from Fab Events, because Zoe, these are the realities. What are you planning for the next 6, 12 months? What does your outlook look like? Because this is what we've got to focus on now. We're not going to change what we've got. What we've got is what we've got. We've got to work with that.
Paul knows I'm very much a person who thinks optimistically, thinks about how you can innovate. And yes, in the same position as a lot of people in my profession in March, we lost all this business. But yes, it took away live events from me, but it didn't take away my skill set. So I encourage anybody within my profession, and I can say this on a service basis, so my kind of skill set is more service based, it's more project management, planning, very much customer service based in reference to I can operate from home. And I know a lot of people in my profession can't, in terms of operations, sound technicians, operational staff. And so it's more difficult for them to innovate. But I do think innovation is key. I think it is the only way we are going to move forward. And if you're not moving forward and you're not innovating, in my opinion, you stand still. And this is where I understand where everybody is coming from and how negative that announcement, and the impact that's going to have on us all. But it is going to be, I feel, about survival. And I do agree with Paul. I do think the best thing in some industries is to have an open conversation with your workforce, adapt contracts. So you're saying, look, you're still a part of the company, the vision, the mission, the brand values. You're still a part of the team. We just need some flexibility from you right now. So what we're going to do, the best option is, so we can keep you within our company, is to put on a 0-hour contract. We encourage you and we will help you to go and find flexible work, whether that is seasonal work. The positives, because I look at the positives in everything, is we're coming into, in terms of retail, the busiest season. So there will be opportunities that they will be able to go and pick up work that then potentially is not going to be there, for example, in the first few months of next year, and allow them then to come back and work more hours within the organisation that they was first in, if that makes sense. So for me, it is just about adapting, innovating, and just thinking we can't control the uncontrollable, or what we can't physically influence ourselves. All we can do is control and influence how businesses and how we move forward. And like with Paul about coming together, I think we will do it. It's just we've got to have that mindset to achieve that.
A lot of your event management strategies comes into play there. Do you take in what you do in your business and the strategy of an event into the strategy of the business going forward, Zoe?
Yes, you have to. So I was very much operational before March, and now I'm more virtual. I'm more strategy and consultant based. I'm assisting with online events instead. I'm assisting with marketing and sales because that is my background with event management. So it's looking at your skill set, and I encourage anybody who is listening to this podcast, yes, it has taken away the bread and butter of the business. That goes without saying, but it hasn't taken away your skill set. So use your skill set in the best way possible, and look at how you can innovate your business, because you created that business. So you have the substance to create something to survive, and you have the art to create something even better than before. It's just all about evolving. I do believe that the event industry is going to look different next year. I think it will be a lot of hybrid events, because I think there will still be a lot of uncertainty. I don't think this is going away anytime soon. So it's a task to get your mindset around that, especially from someone like me who's worked in this industry for 14 years. But you have to do it. You have to move forward, and you have to just think of the positives in these uncertain times, because that's all that's left, really. Not to get political, but those in charge haven't given us much choice. So we either be positive or we don't. It's always the choice from within, in my opinion, and you you have a choice, really. They can't take away your skill set, so you definitely have a choice of how you move forward from this.
Alasdair, are you expecting to sit in a lot of meetings over the next few weeks and months in regards to this situation?
I mean, I have been anyway, Ben. It's an evolving situation. It's a step back, not a step forward. It won't necessarily change the grim mindset of some clients, but Zoe's right. I mean, makes some very good points there, and I'm pleased to say that a lot of clients have shown an incredible amount of resilience in adapting to the situation. But I think that sadly, the events industry in particular is going to be the worst hit. I think you can pedal and adapt, but as I say, that is the kind of liberal market economy that the Western world has. It will adapt, but that's not to say there won't be bloodshed on the carpet and a lot of people that will find themselves in different work, whether that's on a temporary basis, a part-time basis, or permanent career change. Zoe's right. There will be events next year, but the market will look very different.
Yeah. And Paul, of course, we invest a lot in equipment. That's our bread and butter. That's where we get the money in, is by getting the equipment out there working, isn't it? It's going to be a lot harder for people with the equipment and the investments and the huge warehouses to pivot and to understand where that equipment can be used, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen some of the big boys have already folded in the last couple of weeks, especially in the AV industry, mainly because a lot of their kit they don't actually own. It's on finance. So without being able to actually get that stuff out, that's basically just crippled them. So the likes of MCL and all that and Blitz, they've gone because of that. Companies that are fortunate that have actually got it, it's not on finance, they've owned it, they may have owned it a few years, they may have owned it a few months. This is where you've got to make the most of it. So you've got options here. You're either going to have to sell stuff. I've seen some exhibition companies that are selling off stuff, basically to try and get some money back in, but then it means that they don't need that certain storage facility, so they can then get rid of that, which reduces the rent and the rates. I'm not saying do that, but it's an option to look at. I know a couple of the people on the forum are doing that. But the other thing is find ways of making that kit work for you. But we have had kit going out for some of the most weirdest and wonderful things. So, last week we had a bit of kit going out for a property auction, which was normally we'd do that at Aston Villa for 1,000 people in the audience, and there'd be a couple of thousand people watching online. Well, they can't do that. So literally in their offices, but they need the kit from us to run it. And they were literally doing a 12-hour live auction stream from their offices. So they want to hire the bits from us. They'd rather bring us in, get the experts in, run it, because they don't want the hassle of buying it and trying to sort it out themselves. Doing stuff for Highways England, they don't want the hassle of buying kit and stuff they don't know. They know what they're doing. They don't want to deal with the AV side. That's what we're doing. Film studios, we've had film studios contacting us saying, we need a stage, we need a platform. Great. I've been sending them out left, right and centre. So you've got to find ways to adapt to make the use of the kit. And that is the one way that you will go, because if you just sit there waiting for the phone to ring, it ain't going to happen, because people ain't going to be calling you for events. People are going to be calling you for bits for what their specific needs are. So go out and find out what those needs are.
And of course, we had a big conversation about an event last night that was under consideration. There is always ways of doing things. So Zoe, your strapline on your website is stress-free events. There's a little bit of stress in our industry, if we're honest. How are you going to create some stress-free events for us going forward using the skills that people have?
Like I say, for me to create a stress-free environment, it's me to take on the responsibility of the event. That's how it becomes stress-free, because then I manage it. If it wasn't stress-free, I wouldn't be doing my job properly. So for those that were within the industry, it's just looking about what we've got and what's currently in as means. Like Paul said, looking at what you can use within your business and how you can adapt that event to ensure that it still goes ahead. As I've mentioned earlier, I think hybrid events, for example, are going to be probably the way forward at the start of this year, as the capacity starts to increase from 6 to 15 to 30, and it will go up from there. I do believe that. So for me, it's about my time now. It's about collaborating, making sure I've got the right connections and contacts, because I do think that this is going to be quite like a bit of a boom in our industry with the hybrid events, if I'm honest. But for example, the operational requirements are going to be different from the online requirements, and we don't have that at the moment. We didn't have that synergy before, but we do now. So for me, it's just about keeping connected with my network, keeping the line of communication open to answer anyone's questions that anyone might have that is feeling very stressed at the moment. As Paul knows, I'm more than happy to have a chat. I'm a bit of a chatterbox, and I am obviously well connected within my network, so I will know somebody that can assist going forward. And there is always a plan B, because you can't run an event and not having a plan B, in my opinion. So they use this time to see what can be your plan B and your plan C as well. And that's how you will create a stress-free environment, because you will have another option. Do not go into an event going forward and not have that, because I think what this time has showed us is we do need to have that plan B. And I do think that is the reason why, like, for example, me and Paul are seeing companies fold, is because they haven't thought of, well, what if that income wasn't there anymore? What if that physical event was taken away from us? So I just think it's an opportunity, and how you can kind of ensure it's stress-free from yourself is just by having that second option, connecting with people during these times and expanding your network.
And Alasdair, of course, it's the companies need to obviously pivot and change direction. They need to take their staff with them, don't they? Because what would you say, for example, if people in that business are so used to doing things that way, they won't adapt? Where do we sit there? Because we can't afford to lose the experience we have in the industry. If we drop out the industry with the experience, we're going to have unexperienced people learning off no one. So how do we stop people dropping out because they don't want to change and adapt?
Managing change is always being very much at the forefront of HR. And as an employment lawyer, I seldom get involved in the nitty-gritty of it. I tend to deal with the harsh realities of people who are struggling to change. And find themselves ultimately being dismissed. If you're talking about short-term adapting, well, I think people have done very well at that to some degree. Taking your employees along on the ride really will depend on the direction and vision of the business and the engagement of those staff. If they can see the direction of travel and they understand it, then you're listening to Paul talk about some of the other opportunities that have come their way in recent times is great to hear. And but it's how do you get that message out to employers or companies? You know, we understand your pain, and here's another solution to it. If you're basically saying you've gone from events management to essentially one of equipment supply for different events, then businesses need to know what might be achievable to help them innovate. Sounds like a great direction of travel. I'm sure in the short to medium term, people will do anything to survive for a short time. Long term, businesses will adapt, and those that don't will collapse.
This is it. When anything like this happens, and God forbid it's ever a health crisis again, because we obviously do respect that side of things. But when things like this happen and things change, some good comes out of it, undoubtedly, and people don't go back to what they used to be. We all need to change and adapt and take on board what we're learning now, don't we?
Quite a few people said, "God, I thought you were going to be really angry on the Facebook Live." And I was like, no, it's almost like we saw this coming. We've been discussing this for weeks, haven't we, Ben? It's one of those things. And it was like, so I can either just sit here and let it happen. And I know there are some companies that unfortunately have done that. Or you can plan. You've got to get those ideas out there. You've got to think, right, okay. Well, I went down, I'm not going to mention the company. I went to see a company, I'm not even going to say what they do, who are really in dire straits, and they've been struggling, and there is nothing out there for them, which is heart-wrenching because they're such a fantastic organisation. But they found a way to get income in through some very unusual ways, but using the skill sets of the people that they've got, because they've got carpenters, they've got, you know, and people that can do stuff. And what they're doing now and what they'll push out is such a niche thing. It's amazing, and I really do hope that helps them get through. But you really, really, really need to be, as we said, I'm going to go back over the things. You need to be talking to your staff. You need to be looking at your options of what you can do, using the skill sets you've got there to your best advantage, and looking at the markets, and look at markets that you've never even considered before. Back in the day when we could do events, you know, I used to do tons of funerals. Who'd think that an AV company would do funerals? It's insane, but we did tons of them. Okay, we're not doing as many now, but we are looking at other things to do. You know, I didn't think we were putting staging into bloody film studios, but we are. Basically, don't give up. Don't think all hope is lost. There are ways and means to get round this. And also, don't be afraid to talk to other people in your industry. It doesn't matter whether they are the same people. They do different things. They might be like event organisers, they might be people who are working in the wedding industry. Or they can be same companies. The amount of same AV companies I've spoken to, none of them have turned around and gone, well, I'm not talking to you because you're my competitor. They've all been great. Let's throw some ideas around. How can we work together? That's what's going to get us through this.
Absolutely right, Paul. I think that, networking is it's not all about your next job. That's only part of it. It's education, it's collaboration, it's just, as you say, the more you speak to people, competitors as well, within reason maybe to a degree, but yeah, absolutely right. You never know what will come out of a conversation. Every industry that's been impacted upon this year, I mean, look at my own industry, legal services. It's actually it's done surprisingly well generally. Even areas that you might think otherwise, like commercial property, have been generally busy. But working from home, I think a lot of firms who are very, very reticent about it. I mean, I've been working with my legal hat on in a virtual law firm for 6 years or so now. So we get it. But I think that what we will see post-pandemic is an acceleration of that whole working from home. I think those expensive office suites for offices in London and other parts, I wouldn't want to be a landlord in some of those areas now, because businesses are thinking, do we need this? Can we downsize? Can we relocate? Can we get out of those expensive rental areas? There are opportunities that will come out of the current hardship, without doubt.
There are some perils to working from home, Alasdair, aren't there? With
like
jobs.
Jack Russell's and deliveries, absolutely, yeah. I know Paul has expect Chihuahuas are very similar in that respect. Susie wants to fight everybody who comes past the door.
This podcast for me has summed up the events industry. We started off solemnly and we really have turned it round. And what a great way to end the podcast with talking to somebody who's called their company Fab Events. How can you not end being positive with somebody called Fab Events? Zoe, end the podcast on a big ending. It's over to you to tell us, to cheer up this industry, to get us going, and to tell everybody we can do this, the can-do attitude. Go on, Zoe, over to yourself.
You can do it. You just can. This community is the reason I fell in love with the event industry through university, and it'll be the reason that I stay in the event industry probably until my last working day. So those that are within the event industry, we will come together, we will be united. Just think about what you can do just to survive over these next 6 months, and use your network to help you survive, because we're all here to help each other, because we're all in the same boat. So yeah, you can definitely do it, and don't let anyone tell you you can't. Just look at how you can adapt and how you can innovate over the next 6 months to survive, and you'll be absolutely fine.
Love it. Love it. I'm ending the podcast on that. Alasdair, Paul, thank you very much for joining us this morning, as always. Zoe, you were fab.
Yes, can you tell I am called Fab Events?
I'm ending on this laughter. Thank you all. Let's go and do it, guys. Let's go and do it. Let's go and smash it. Thank you.